All right. So again, up on Blackboard, you're going to see the videos. So worst case scenario, again, if you want to study for something, you know, you want to review some of the things we talked about before, you can always do so on Blackboard. That's where we're going to have it. And on that, let's go just all the way back to the beginning for a second and bookmark it and say, welcome back. We are COMP2112, that's advanced client-side JavaScript, which I like to call it JavaScript, client-side scripting at Georgian College in the fall 2022 semester. And it's week 2, part 2 of our broadcast and recording together, right? Making a video, so this is how we do it. All right, so where last we left off, we did all of our installations, and I've gone around for the people that are here in the class and have gone through and made sure that everyone's got their installations working. And this is a great first step because now we're on the same, you know, kind of foundation. We're starting in the same place, you know, as an example. Again, we've made some assumptions. We know that you're using Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio 2022. However, you can use whatever you know, platform you like. I'm not going to get involved with that, that's for sure. And what I want to briefly talk about after we've done these installations, I'm just going to skip down to the stuff we've talked about. We did MVM, and we talked about clients. And once you've done that, you should be at a point now where all of you are seeing 18.9.0 on your screen. So I want to quickly talk about, oh, by the way, if you're a Mac person, the installation is a little bit more complex. If you're a Mac person, you're out there watching this video or whatever, you need to use something called Homebrew, and the installation steps are here. Okay. All right. Let's talk about progressive enhancement in 2 slides. Number 1, what is progressive enhancement? It's basically a fundamental for everything that we do when it comes to development, web development. And it's really a fundamental, or because it takes a layered approach to functional separation. Okay, so I want you to think of that, right? I have HTML, I have CSS, and I have JavaScript. And really what progressive enhancement says is, why are we doing, you know, CSS if I don't have good HTML, right? It starts as a bottom-up approach. First, you need good markup for your content. Before that, you need content. No content, who cares about your markup, right? Content is king, as they say, and without content, you have nothing, right? So if a customer or client comes to you and says, I want you to build my web application, sometimes it's your brother, uncle, mother's, sister's, cousin's dog that comes to you and says, you know, hey, I know you're a developer at Georgian. Can you build me a website for free? And you know what you're going to say to them? No, I don't have time to do that for you because you guys don't work for free, right? I'm just being honest, okay? If you say that, you know what you're going to get into? You're going to have to support them for free for life, right? So please don't support anybody for free. If you went to your brother's, sister's, cousin's, uncle, who's a contractor, and got you and you asked them to help you build your house, they would say, no problem. It's going to cost you $5,000 plus. Right? Why? Because they have to do something else. They're going to stop a job to do your thing. I want you to take the same approach. I'm sorry to tell you this with everybody else, including your relatives, right? You are worth something, all right? You are not free. After this semester and next semester, you have skills that are marketable, right? So that's the first thing you're going to do. And another thing we get when we get clients, and again, it's not like we're always doing greenfield projects, meaning like a project from scratch. We don't do those things. We kind of do some kind of modification to an existing website, typically, all right? Or an enhancement. We add features. That's what we kind of do. And a lot of times they'll say, well, can you make this stuff for me? And the first thing you're going to say is, great, I would love to help you. And here's, you know, I want to figure out the cost for you, but what content do you have? And if they say to you, I got no content, then you're like, okay, I don't do content. I do web development, right? You're not copywriters. You're not, you know, you're not photographers. You don't do that kind of work, right? And a lot of you aren't artists, right? You could be if you have those skills. Fantastic. You're even better than me, right? but I don't have those skills. I hire people for that. I hire an artist, I hire a photographer, I hire a copywriter, right? And you have to include those as separate costs because that has nothing to do with you. You're a web developer. That's what you do, right? Or chances are they have content, but it's terrible, right? Like it's from the 1990s, you know, one of those kind of content sites that you saw before, right? That's okay. Take the content that they give you and do the best you can with it. Don't do anything extra because at the end of the day, you're not getting paid for it. That's how it is. Just like if someone gave you a job to do and they said, can you fix this bathroom? You're not going to go and fix their kitchen too, right? That's not what you do. You're fixing the bathroom. That's the project, not the kitchen, right? So do the bathroom is what I'm saying. But when it comes down to it, content is first. No content, no need for you to be there in the first place, all right? Next is HTML, where we mark up the content and make sure that there's good semantic HTML, which means that your tags, your elements that you're using make sense, right? And why? Because we want to focus on three things: the content, the user, and accessibility. Without good semantic HTML, it's not necessarily an accessible site to people who have problems looking at it. For example, people with screen readers who can't particularly look at a site. Maybe they're legally blind, but they still want to have access to content, to information, right? We want to be able to support those people too. We want to take an inclusive approach. So we want to separate things in layers. And typically we want to separate it in structure, presentation, and behavior layers. Those are the three layers we want to use. Okay, structure is your HTML. Presentation is your CSS, some kind of CSS you put together or using a CSS framework, as well as your behavior layer, which is what we're focusing on in this course, which is all around JavaScript. Okay. So again, it's a bottom-up approach, and it kind of looks like this, right? Where your structure layers at the bottom, assuming that you have content, you mark it up, you add CSS to make a beautiful presentation layout, right? And then finally, we add JavaScript. And here's something I want to tell you. There's a lot of stuff we can do with CSS, right? That we don't need JavaScript for at all. Some people use JavaScript for stuff they don't need to use JavaScript for. Example, I don't know, some kind of hover effect. You don't need to do that. CSS can do it all for you, right? And you guys should know this because you've gone through some CSS courses, yes? Right? So, and sometimes I like to look at this really great site called CSS Zen Garden, which is also you also might have seen before, right? CSS Zen Garden was made by strictly with CSS2, not CSS3, right? They would take some content and they could spin it by changing the theme. Okay, so here's the CSS Zen Garden as an example for the current theme that they have. But if I chose another theme, I'm just going to choose one of the themes here from the list. You can see that it spins the content in different ways. The same content spun, and I mean that in changed with and laid out differently with CSS, only CSS. There's a lot of great functionality you can get with CSS. And I think people really discount the value, the beautiful things that you can do with CSS. Actually, as developers, that is our weakest skill, CSS. Why? Not if people don't like it. It's a little bit hard to get a handle of. But without knowledge of CSS and the box model in general, or even Flexbox, then it's really difficult for you to understand how to make JavaScript work. You can't do JavaScript without CSS, right? So this is why we take a layered approach. This is why we talk about progressive enhancement, right? We want to continue to enhance, want to add features that aren't available through HTML or CSS alone. Okay, make sense? That's progressive enhancement in 2 slides. Okay, I don't want to keep going too much more than that. You can read more about progressive enhancement. I encourage you to do so if you're interested. There's great articles out there on what to do properly and how to do it. I'm just not going to focus on it this semester because we've lost a whole week, right, to Labor Day. Maybe if it was last week, it would have focused more on it, you know, but this week we don't have time. So I'm moving on. Any questions about progressive enhancement and the need to do this? I think it should be pretty apparent to you. Let's do the JavaScript demo. So I'm going to shut down the PowerPoint slide down. And I also want to shut down pretty much everything except for Visual Studio Code right now. Let's bring up Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to, close off my project. Okay, so there we go. So again, the assumption is you know Visual Studio Code, you've used it before, and the way we're going to do this is I'm going to have some kind of workspace that I'm going to create on my desktop. This is where I'm going to do it for you guys. So I have a workspace right now that I'm using for COMP2112, mobile pervasive computing, and I'm going to do another one for you guys. So I'm going to make a brand new folder that I'm going to call COMP2112. And in there, I'm going to make another folder called week 1 or week 2 in this case. Sorry. So this is week 2. Let's do it like this. And in week 2, all we can do if we want to is we take this folder and drag and drop it into our Visual Studio Code, right? This is what we did. This is what you should know how to do already. So I'm just going to drag this folder into Visual Studio Code. Yeah. And then it says, do I want to trust the authors? Yes, I do. Okay, so this is what your Visual Studio Code should look like right now. Yeah. Does anyone have issues launching Visual Studio Code or dragging and dropping your folder in there? You shouldn't have access. You shouldn't have problems. This is part of your in-class exercise for this week. By the way, questions I had about in-class exercises were, when are they due? All in-class exercise, unless otherwise noted, are due on the Sunday of the week that we're doing the in-class exercise at midnight. No exceptions, no extensions, which means you have the entire week to get it done. Typically, in-class exercise should be due today, but I'm giving you 5 more days or 6 more days to get it done. That's your extension, okay? Every single week. So please don't ask me to accept something that you didn't hand in on the Sunday, because we have time today. You're doing it today, potentially, okay? So don't say like on a Monday, Tom, I forgot to do my in-class exercise. Oh, well, 4%, bye-bye, right? I don't want to be so harsh, but we have to do this because we have so much to do this semester. So please follow along with me if you can. It saves you time, saves us heartache. We don't have to talk about these things again, and you're good to go, okay? And now there are going to be some times where it's not due on a Sunday, it's due on a Saturday or something else like that. And the reason for this, I'll tell you ahead of time, because we have an assignment that's due on a Sunday. I have both assignment and your in-class exercise due on the same day. Maybe I'll do it on the Sunday. Maybe I'll do it on the Monday. I'll tell you when it's due if there's a change. And it's only because of an assignment or an exam or something that comes up that's more important. It's worth like 8% instead of 4%. And I want to give you more time to do something, okay? But typically it's Sundays. Just to put it out there for you, at least. Okay, so that's number 1. So when I say that this is the in-class exercise, we're beginning the in-class exercise today, this is it. We're doing it now. And after this, you can watch the recording. There might be some times when we do in-class exercises that there's something that we do together, and there's something that I've asked you to research and do on your own. Okay, there might be that part too as well. I might say, hey, we've done this part together, now do the rest, right? And I'll tell you what the rest is. For the rest, typically, I might say, do a small video that's 1 to 2 minutes, put it up on YouTube or some kind of clickable service. And I'll give you more details around that when the time comes, not this week, okay? And then you put it up and I see the video, 2 minutes, I'll take a look at what you've done and you get your 4%. It's that simple, right? And I'm telling you guys, missing your in-class exercise is really not sustainable for you guys. That'd be like 30, like I said, 32% loss. I'm saying it again. I know I said it earlier. I'm repeating myself. Don't, let your GPA suffer for something that's so easy just to follow along with me. All right. That's really what we're doing. All right. Week 1 or week 2. So what I want to do when we structure our stuff is I want you to think about the folders that I'm going to use. Typically, some people use something like JS for a folder. We're not going to do that. We're going to call it scripts. So let's make a scripts folder, please. So on Visual Studio Code, we're going to make a new folder. We're going to call it scripts. We're just setting up our folder structure. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a script, another folder called content. So again, new folder, and it's going to be called contents. And people get confused about this because my content folder is things like, it's all CSS. It's not actual content, okay? And I'm going to talk about this because if you work with .NET, by default, Microsoft sets it up as content, right? That's your CSS stuff. And that's why I set it up like this too. So if you ever kind of translate your stuff to Microsoft's .NET framework, you're going to have the same folder structure potentially, right? That's why I'm doing it this way. Okay, so content is for your CSS. Scripts is for your JavaScript, TypeScript, anything else we do. And the last one is, if I do a new folder, is assets. Assets are images, sounds, all that kind of stuff. That's where your folders are going to be. Assets, content, scripts. Those are the three folders. Okay. And what we want to do is I want to make, for most websites, you know, as an example, we have an entry point. And that entry point, again, forgive me, I know you've done websites before. Your entry point is the index.html file. Let's put that in. So again, new file this time, and we're going to call it index.html. We're starting from scratch, and I'm going to use something called Emmet. You guys know Emmet? Yes. Liar, right? Really? I'm joking. If you really haven't heard of it? Okay, great. Emmet is actually built, I was just joking, but yeah, it's built into to Visual Studio Code. Emmet is a shorthand for writing HTML. This class is not about writing HTML. This class is about JavaScript. So we're not going to write HTML by hand, and we're not going to write CSS by hand. We're going to write JavaScript. So for me to set up HTML, here's what I'm going to type. I'm going to type in HTML5, right? And what's going to come up is potentially some Emmet that we can use. So it really depends on how you're set up, okay? And I'm just going to pull this up here as an example. So on the bottom of your here on your Visual Studio Code, here, let's go here. Just going to bring this up here for a second. Sorry, I'm just working with a monitor that's slightly smaller than I'm used to. Notice that what it's detecting here is HTML, right? There you go, HTML. And it kind of does auto detection. So depending on what you've got installed, what extensions you have installed with Visual Studio Code, it'll detect you know, what you're doing. So here's the configured language is what it says here, right? So a lot of times what I can do is if I type in something like script, right? If I type in script here, you know, for a thing, notice it'll say script source, and then also it'll do my auto completion. Auto completion is what Emmet does for you, but you can do it with everything. An example of that would be if I just type in HTML, there might be something called HTML5. And if I type HTML5, it's going to go bam, and it's going to give you a starter. Oh, that's Emmet. Okay. Kind of, but it does it's a shorthand. To talk about this, let's go to emmet.io. So we're going to use this the entire semester, so please get used to it. Emmet.io, if you go to the documentation for emmet.io, it tells you kind of if you scroll down here, how to use the syntax. So here's the syntax for emmet.io. So take a look at this. What it can do with it is do something like, div greater than ul greater than li, and it'll create this. Exactly. And why am I doing this? Because this is similar to your CSS. If I write CSS, a selector on CSS, or if I write a selector with query selector all or query selector, I'm going to write something like this. And what it's going to do is it's going to search through and it's going to do it's the exact same syntax as CSS. Okay. So this is what it looks like. So as an example, let's just, I'm just going to zoom back out just to give you that back in here, right? This is what HTML does. It gives you this HTML stuff. And let's make a document. For now, we're going to call this, just in the document title, we're going to call this COMP2112. There's the document title. Remember we said progressive enhancement. No HTML, who cares, right? And typically what I do underneath the title is I put in, here's some comments, HTML comments. In the title, I put something like, here is my CSS section, right? This is my CSS section. And there's two places to put JavaScript, right? Tell me what are the two most common places to, and we're going to use external JavaScript files. Okay, conventions in this class. No inline, what should we call it, JavaScript. We don't do that. Inline JavaScript, bad. Okay, we never use inline JavaScript unless, proviso, it solves a problem that we can't fix as developers. It's basically a hack. If we're going to hack something, we need to make it work. That's the only time we use inline JavaScript. Otherwise, if I ask you not to, you'll lose marks. If I see inline JavaScript, okay? No inline JavaScript unless otherwise noted, okay? Sometimes React will show inline JavaScript when you do it. That's React generation. That's not you writing it. React did it for you. Okay, fine. But for us, we don't write inline JavaScript. We write external JavaScript. So again, I'm asking you the question, where should I put my JavaScript from the very beginning? Yes. Why the bottom and why the top? Why would you put it on the top? So what would you do? Why would you put it up? What would you do? If you're a developer, tell me what you would do.
I would put it at the top, that's all we're doing.
Okay. I would put it at the bottom typically, right? Typically. But sometimes I put it at the top, and we'll learn when to do that, especially when we're building our single page application. Sometimes we need to put certain JavaScript at the top before the content loads, right? Other times we need to put JavaScript at the bottom, so we wait till after the content loads. And to make sure that the content loads, we're going to wrap all of our JavaScript with an IFE. Does anyone know what an IFE is? I-I-F-E. Yes.
This is like a function that doesn't really call to be executed.
Okay. Anyone else? This is all new stuff, guys. So we're going to learn what an IFE is this semester. All right. I'm going to tell you about this right now. First, I'm going to put, and it's okay what you said. I like your answer, either top or the bottom. That's great. What you said is perfect. But I'm going to put our JavaScript together when we're starting out. It's going to be here. So this is our JavaScript section. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to add my friendly Bootstrap and Font Awesome libraries, right? And in the past, what we would do is we would go out, grab Bootstrap, download it, and put it in, right? By hand. Guys, we aren't doing any by hand anything ever for us, okay? We don't do that. We're going to use NPM and Yarn. Let's do some NPM installations to help us out. To use the integrated terminal, you need to use control backtick. Control backtick, which is the character that's underneath the tilde, or where the tilde is on your keyboard. You look at your keyboard, control backtick, right? The backtick key we use for what else? What do you use the backtick key for? There's a couple of reasons why we use it. We use it for template strings. You guys know about template strings with JavaScript? Yes. Template strings are another way. It's new for ECMAScript 2015, 2016, 2017, and so on. Template strings are different than just regular strings with double quotes, right? Double quote strings are dumb strings. Template strings allows us to interpolate and inject stuff inside the string itself. So we're going to be using the backtick character, which is underneath your tilde, as a template string. Okay, we're going to do that later on. Okay, so bear with me. So what we want to do here, we're inside, notice my path, my command path here. I'm inside my folder. And that goes back to what you asked, which is, what if I want to do GitHub and blah, 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 right? What I want to start off is, we're starting off, we just have an HTML file, and I want to do more than this. Let's initialize a Git repository. Okay, who remembers the commands? Git in it. Okay, let's do it. Git in it. Git in it. Let's do that. And then press enter. It's going to say, it should say, initialize Git repository in whatever the folder you're in. Yes? Okay. Again, what this does, if we want to look at the folder structure on the operating system, if I look at the operating system side, you're going to see an empty or a hidden .git folder. If you can't see this hidden file, you can always go to View, and you want to check on hidden items. Okay. You also, in this class, want to check on file extensions. Please make sure you check on file extensions and hidden items so that you can see what I see, right, in your folder structure, right? Make sense? So Git init, which we were very correct in saying that's the first command, right, is it creates a hidden .git folder for us. That's where everything is. That's why if I'm inside that folder, it knows that you mean that Git repository, not the other one. Okay, make sense? Okay, next. Let's go to the next part. So now that we've done this, we need to do an add, yes. And I'm going to do git add dot. That's going to add in all the files we have right now, okay? And for today, we're not going to do a git ignore file. We're going to do that next week, right? Because we just want to get going, okay? Git add dot means every file that I have. And notice it added this one, but these ones were not added. here's something that I want you to know about GitHub and Git in general. Git does not track empty folders. If your folder is empty like this, it's completely untracked. It's useless. Let's give something for Git to add. We're not going to do a commit yet, okay? We can do multiple adds, going back to what Tyler said. Hey, he said, why do we need to do individual files? Here's an example of this, all right? Let's add in some empty files in here. The first file we're going to add in is an app.js file inside the scripts folder. I'm going to right-click on my script folder, and I'm going to go new file, and I'm going to say app.js. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for my content, except this time it's going to be app.css. Right-click, and I'm going to do a new file. I'm going to say app.css. So now I have a couple files in the folders, and if I go back down here to the command line and put in git add dot, you're going to see that now I have more files. These A's that you can see here for me mean I've added new things to the repository. By the way, Visual Studio's code is very smart. And on the left, you can see that there is a source control is detecting that these files have been staged. All right, it's part of Visual Studio Code. Okay, great. So now that we've added those things, what about assets? What if I want to keep assets, but I don't have any assets yet, and I want to keep that file structure? How do I add an empty folder to my Git repository? There's a bit of a hack, is the answer. And the hack is we right-click into assets. Let's suppose this is our empty folder. We're going to add a new file, and we're going to add the file that's going to be called .getkeep. I'm serious. It's an empty file. And of course, now there's a file, and because it's an empty file, it's going to be ignored by anything else in your system. But because there's a file inside there, we're going to keep track of your folder structure. Your folder structure remains. So sometimes when we're scaffolding out a web application, I want to have some git keeps in there. So just so I can scaffold the folder structure that I want to share with someone else, as an example. I want that exact folder structure up on GitHub or saved. So that's why I add git keeps. Let's add in let's do another git add dot. Okay, so again, git add dot. And what you've noticed is I've done git add dot a bunch of times. That's going back to Tyler. It's like smashing a fly with a sledgehammer. I could have said git add dot git keep, right? As an example, right? But it's just easier. Okay. So I've done git init and a bunch of adds. Now I'm ready to do my first commit, or my initial commit, which is my baseline snapshot for my project. So let's do that. So we'll say git commit minus M for message, and then we'll say I use initial commit. There we go. And by the way, if you ever want to scroll up, you can always scroll up and see what your commands are before with your mouse wheel, middle mouse wheel, if you have a middle mouse wheel. Hopefully you do. Or you can use the arrow keys the same way. So those are the commands I've issued so far. Are you with me? Anyone have a problem or encountering any issues? Hopefully not. Okay, sure.
Why is yours have like the symbols on the side?
Ah, that's because I have beautiful extensions that I'm going to share with you at some later dates that make my Visual Studio Code look beautiful. I'm just telling you, I've added some extensions to make my Visual Studio Code beautiful. That's what I've done, right? I'm going to give you those extensions. Don't worry, right? Not today, but we will get. What I'll do is I'll put a list of extensions up on Blackboard, and you can just download those things. And then your Visual Studio Code can look like mine if you really care. All right, so now that we have this is wonderful. And what I want to do is I want to put this up on GitHub. Again, this is a requirement of your in-class exercise for this week. So I want to go to GitHub. Remember that GitHub link we had? And you may have created something that looks like this. I'm hoping you created this already, right? And there's these last 3 lines of code. We've gone most of the way there. All I need is these last 3 lines of code here. If I copy them, do it with me, copy them, and then switch back to your Visual Studio Code and right-click in here, it automatically pastes them in. Okay? So again, I went here, I copied these ones, right? I went back to my Visual Studio Code and right-click, just right-click, and it adds them in. Do you see that effect? If I press enter, here is when you're going to get the first time that you're going to push it up to GitHub for some of you by your command prompt. Please, I haven't pressed enter yet. If you press enter, you're going to get a prompt that says log into GitHub for the first time, okay? When you do this, you've got to log in with the proper credentials for your GitHub account, okay? So make sure you put in your username, your email address that's associated with your GitHub account, plus your password. If you mess it up, you'll never be able to push up right now, okay? So for me, I've already done it. I'm just going to press enter, and what it's going to do is going to push everything up to GitHub, and it'll look like this. For you, you might have an extra step where it's asking you to log in for the first time. So please go through the process. If you've already configured your Git username, which I asked you to do already, remember git user.name, git config, -- global user.name, whatever your name is, and so on. If you've already done those steps, it should be pretty straightforward to get this done. Okay. So now, are you with me? Are you good? Did you put it up on GitHub? The way to check this is if you go switch to GitHub and refresh the page, you should see exactly the folder structure that I've designed, which is this. That's what you should see on GitHub. Take a look. And that's what yours should look like too. All right. My friends, you've done the first push from command line for some of you, right? And this is an entry into a new world, right? Because you've been depending on, your user interfaces for so long and you don't need them. Okay. Actually, it's okay to use them. I just want you to know the underlying version, the underlying thing that's happening. Here's another thing you can see on GitHub. The commit is listed right here. All right, here's the commit, one commit. Okay, it tells you what we did, our initial commit. If I click on the commit, it tells you, you can actually look inside of the commit itself, right? There's a lot of detail here. It tells you I can actually look at the code for that particular commit itself. Every commit has a special hashed number and alphanumeric code. And this alphanumeric code for the commit, so if I look at the commit itself, see this alphanumeric code here? It's actually a really long code. This is just a abbreviated version of it. It's a unique code that makes your commit unique all over the world. And it's based on your machine, the time, it creates a hash for you and so on, okay? Awesome. If you've done it this far, you're mostly there to get your in-class exercise done and just submitting today. I'm not joking. This is the thing I want you guys to do. Huh? Yes, for marks, right? It's for marks. That's why we're doing it. All right, and let's get back to Visual Studio now. So now that we've done this first initial commit, we've created a baseline for our project, which is pretty cool, right? We've got our assets, our content, our scripts, right? We've got all this stuff happening. And then inside this, right, we want to add in some additional functionality, but we need to add in some tools to help us. By default, when you install Node, we installed Node because you installed NVM and we did that. We should have access to Node right in here, right? If I go here inside of my command prompt and type in node -- version, you should see it here too, right? You should see that command coming up, right? That's a problem. If you use, yeah, okay, so Tyler's correct. So if you have a problem here, worst case scenario, then what you can do is you can use your command prompt, your system command prompt, not the integrated command prompt inside of Visual Studio Code. What may have happened is if you had Visual Studio Code running before when you were doing all those installations, you need to reshut it down and restart Visual Studio Code and it should be okay. However, sometimes Visual Studio Code and your command prompt are out of sync. And if you please Google it, again, something for you to do for your system. Every system is different. Please Google it and fix the problem. There's an answer for you, right? It really depends on the problems of your system. But most of you should be able to do this right now. Yes? Okay. Awesome. So here's what we want to do. I want you to do some installations. Here's the first global installation I want you to do. I want you to issue an NPM. NPM stands for Node Package Manager. Remember, it's like Maven, Gradle, whatever out there. And I want to go NPM space. Remember, every Node Package Manager has a verb after it. Here's the verb for NPM. It's install. NPM install -G for global, right? And I want you to install yarn. Yarn. Yarn is another package manager that we're going to use in addition to NPM. All right, Yarn is a very popular option. So Yarn, please, and press enter. And what it's going to do is it's going to go out and install Yarn for you like this. Okay, Yarn is a global installation. It's going to affect the entire your global install for NPM. Okay. Once you've done this, package number 2, let's install TypeScript because we're going to be using that next week. All right. So again, we're going to say npm install -g TypeScript. Okay. TypeScript. Please make sure you spell it correctly. If you spell something incorrectly for NPM, it'll say, I don't understand what you're trying to install. Okay. Press enter, and you're going to see that TypeScript is also installed. And by the way, this is a beautiful thing. Even if you already had Yarn, or if you already had TypeScript, or if you have any of the stuff that I have here again, all it'll do is it'll give you the latest version. It's not going to create a problem if you already have something installed. It'll just install it again. Okay, so don't worry about this. Even if you follow this video later and you do it again on another system or whatever, it's okay. It's gonna be fine. Okay, that's the next one. Next one I want to install is Lite server. npm install Lite, spelled like this, Lite -server. It has to be the dash. Lite -server. And let's put the -g at the end this time. Okay. By the way, npm does not care if you put the -g in after or before the name of the package. Okay, and if I press enter, it's going to go out and grab Lite server and install it to your system. Sometimes it'll say there's vulnerabilities and all this kind of stuff. We don't care about that because we're not going to use Lite server in a commercial environment. So don't worry about it. It's just for us. Okay, so the 3 things we've installed so far globally are Yarn, TypeScript, and Lite server. Again, I'm going to ask you, are you with me? If you're not with me, and if you have a problem, please let me know. Okay. Okay, these are key installations. We're going to do more of this later on. Okay, now let's clear the screen. So CLS to clear the screen in my command prompt. Also, some systems will allow you to use clear if you're using PowerShell. Okay. Sorry, CLS, clear screen. Okay. You're learning DOS commands too. Woo-hoo. Right, really excited. Next, what I want you guys to do is let's add in Bootstrap. Now, how do we do that? So every flavor of library we're going to add in, if I go to getbootstrap.com, and you guys should be familiar with Bootstrap, I think, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Awesome. So here's Bootstrap. And notice it says npm I. I is the, kind of the short form. And it says Bootstrap at 5.2.1. Oh, okay. I want to install this, but I want to keep track of all of my installations. And what we can do is we can use Yarn for this, okay? Not just npm. npm I use for global installations, right? Yarn is faster and more efficient a lot of times to use for local installations from my workspace, okay? I just want to time out here. So going back to this, what I want to do first is I want to issue a yarn init. Let's do this next. Yarn init. Yarn init. When I issue that, it's going to say my yarn, here's my version, and it's asking me what the name of my project is going to be called. That's what this is. That's what the first, it's going to run a batch file for you. This little batch file. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions to answer. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. The first thing is I want to name this thing like we've named it before. Everything should be lowercase. So COMP2112 dash in the fall 2022 semester dash, and it's week 2. And then press enter. That's your first question. Okay. Isn't that wonderful? Right? A lot of times when you have scripting problems with Yarn or scripts running in your Visual Studio Code, there is a fix for it by running PowerShell. And the way to do that, here's the general fix for this problem. Everyone gets this at the beginning. So if I say Visual Studio Code, kind of scripts, kind of stuff is disabled, That's what you probably see. Scripts is disabled on the system. This one, you might get this error. Scripts is disabled on the system, something like that, or it's not, it doesn't have access. There is a fix for this. And if you scroll down, the fix is you have to go to your PowerShell as a administrator, and because you might have something that looks like this, right? I'm just going to show you the PowerShell command, right? And what you want to do, just going to go down to the PowerShell, is set this. This is the thing. I'm going to put this in the chat on Zoom here for people that are logged in, right? Because I know that it's a kind of a long line. But this set execution policy, you're going to do in PowerShell as an administrator. Now, guys, before you do this execution policy, please shut down Visual Studio Code for a second, okay? So this is what you're going to do. Watch. Here's Visual Studio Code. I'm going to shut it down. I'm not going to continue with this because I can't, right? So you can always stop anything you're doing here. We're going to come back and do this again. So I'm going to shut down Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go down to here and launch PowerShell. Here's Windows PowerShell. And I want to launch it as an administrator. And when I do that, I'm going to say, yes, I want to do this. And then it's going to be this blue terminal. The blue terminal is going to be your PowerShell, okay? And what you want to do is this link here, set execution policy, right? This thing right here, I've kind of shared it with you guys on Zoom for those people who are there, or you can just type this into PowerShell and then press enter. It's going to ask you, do you want to confirm? You're going to say yes, and it's going to modify your configuration to accept these scripts that we're going to put into Visual Studio Code. That is just the best fix there is. All right. So please do that now if you have that problem. Because we're going to be doing scripting in Visual Studio Code for the entire semester. Right. So do so whenever you can. Yeah. PowerShell.
Yeah, so let's do this first. Let's do this. So close down your code. So close it down. And then run it again. Sometimes it's that fixed spot. And just type it into that. Yeah. All right, so did you guys issue this command? Yes. Yeah. Have you done it? Did it ask me to say yes? Did you accept it? Did you say yes? If you said yes, you're good to go. Why not? What? PowerShell? One of these. Yes. You're good. You're good. Close this now and then run it to your sets has to be a capital S. So let's do the tab, type that up, and go with us. And then go change that to S. Okay. Remote sign. Execution policy, remote sign minus scope for music. Set execution policy, yes, execution program. Second execution policy. Good. Now close this off and restart it with your promise. Thank you. And you get yes. Correct. And press that Y or yes. Y, right? Okay, close this down now and relaunch the studio code and you should be able to get code in minutes. So you have to type in this and not in command prompt in PowerShell. Okay. No, not Visual Studio Code, PowerShell. So close go down to single to your code, please. Go here and type in PowerShell. That's the one. And then go back. That's what you need to do. PowerShell. There you go. Now run it again, right back. All right, right now, so again, you see that there's a little bit of, we got to do this stuff. This is just the first day, guys. Once we get by this first day, I swear to you, we're not going to do this stuff ever again. All right. We're just front loading all of our problems better, right? So we're getting it done. We're here together. I can fix you and we're good. Once you've got this and once you've fixed your problem, then let's go back to that yarn thing again. All right. I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code one more time. I want to get this done because we're timing out here. As I said, I have 4 hours of content and I have 3 hours of time, right? Always, every single time. All right. So again, let's go back and I'm going to do a yarn init. And I want to call this should work now. Yes. Yeah. Whew. Okay. I'm worried. Okay. Now let's please, for your first question, let's put in COMP2112, or if you want, fall 2022 week 2, you can put in ICE1, or that's what it is, right? ICE1, and I press enter. For your version, the version of our application, just press enter. It's 1 for now, no problem. As a description, this is a demo app for week 2. That's what it is. The entry point, leave it as index.js. It's okay. You don't care about this. Enter. Your repository, take a look. It picks up your repository that you initialized. It kind of detects the repository for you. So this is the repository you're going to use. Press enter, right? It also picks up your name because it knows who you are. Press enter. And we don't care about the license, press enter. We don't care if it's private, press enter, and we're done. And what it does is it creates this beautiful package.json file here on the left. Your package.json file. Your package.json file is your manifest for the project. That's what I want you to think about it. When I say manifest, think about it as your dependency graph, or you're going to have a list of dependencies for your application, your web application, because this semester, guys, we're not making websites. We're making web applications, right? Starting today, right? So this here is going to say, here are all my dependencies. All right. So when I add in Bootstrap, right? And by the way, I'm going to ask you this question next week, and I want to see how if you can remember. There are 2 types of dependencies. Here's the information that I want you to remember for next week. I'm going to quiz you, right? Let's see if you can remember. 2 types of dependencies, right? First is project dependency. That means it's required for your project to run. Without the project dependency inside of here, your project will never run. Second type of dependency, right? Developer dependency, which means we want it because it's nice for us. We added some stuff to make it look pretty, right? To make it look nice, to give us some code hinting, something that we want for as a developer dependency. So again, 2 types of dependencies. Right now, we're going to add in a project dependency. Okay, and we're not going to do it by hand. We're going to use the terminal to do this. So again, control backtick will bring up the terminal. And now I'm just going to clear the screen. We're going to use yarn to get Bootstrap. And this is how it's going to look. I want you to type in yarn add, and then just type in Bootstrap. Let's see what happens. That's it. And then press enter. So remember, yarn is another package manager. Package managers have the name of the package manager followed by a verb. The verb in this case is add. It's different than NPM. NPM is install. Yarn, add. That's what we use, okay? It tells us something. It says, hey, Bootstrap 5.2.1, which is what we want, right? It has an unmet dependency of popper.js.core. Let's add that dependency in there too. All right, so we're going to add that in. We're going to say yarn add at popper.js/core. That's the command, okay? So I actually put an add. How about I put add in there? Ha. All right, there we go. So again, what I'm saying is get that library too.
Popper.js is just a JavaScript library. All right, so let's just get that too. Let's get that. Enter. And it's going to add that into. Where does it add this stuff? It adds it in the node modules folder. Take a look. There's our node modules folder. It puts it right into place for us, right? We don't have to do any manual downloading or unzipping or nothing. It's right here. Okay. So that's the way it's going to be. Next dependency. I want to add in jQuery from day one because a lot of stuff we're going to be using requires jQuery as a base. So we're going to say yarn add jQuery. Okay, like so. Yarn add jQuery. And then press enter. Okay. So we've added jQuery and we've added Bootstrap, and we've added Popper.js. We need to add Font Awesome as well. Let's do that now. Okay, so Font Awesome. Did you guys use Font Awesome too? Good. So remember Font Awesome. If I go to fontawesome.com, right? Font Awesome has an installation step as well. And for Font Awesome, remember that you can use different ways to install it, right? So Font Awesome, it gives you these great fonts to use, so we can play around with them and that kind of stuff. It says start for free, right? So I want to go to start for free. And then it talks about how to install everything. I can say on websites, in desktop apps, and a bunch of stuff. Let's do on websites. And when I do on websites, if I scroll down, it says there's different ways to do this, right? I can add Font Awesome in different ways. For example, I can add it for React, which is what we're going to do it, or Vue, or Python, or whatever. And that's what we want to do. But how do you install Font Awesome? I want to do installation for Font Awesome. So if I want to get started, right, the first thing we want to add in is how to install. Like, how do I install Font Awesome? That's the first thing. So under documentation, by the way, Font Awesome is at 6.2. A lot of times under documentation, it's going to show us how to do such a thing, right? So again, it says on desktops, in desktop apps, with web, with APIs, and so on, right? And it asks us how to do it, right? Sometimes it's just simple enough just to say something like, you know, install Font Awesome with, with Yarn, because Yarn, it also supports Yarn. So if I say something like Yarn install Font Awesome, right? If I do something like this, if I just type that in my search, it's basically going to say, look, yes, you can install Font Awesome like this, but there's probably going to be probably a link here in on Font Awesome itself, and it tells you how to do it, right? So there are two things. I can use Font Awesome Pro, which we don't want to do because we don't want to pay for anything, or we can use Font Awesome Free, which is we do want to do, right? So that's what we want to do, and we can do that by installing the package. If I scroll down, right, then we can kind of see where it is. And notice it gives you commands for npm and yarn. So what we want to do is this command with yarn. Here's the command: yarn add @Fort Awesome /Font Awesome Free. It's right here on the screen for you. And I'll copy this in your chat on again on for those people who are on Zoom. I'll copy it here too. So that's the command we have to issue: yarn add @Fort Awesome /Font Awesome Free. This is the one. You can also copy it here as a code snippet, go back to Visual Studio Code and right click, and it'll just do it for you. So now we have Fort Awesome, Font Awesome Free, as well as Bootstrap. It is installed in our project, but it hasn't been added to our index.html page. That is the next piece we need to do. Okay, notice, by the way, we have 2,000 plus files we've added to our project right now that have nothing to do with us. Next week, we're going to remove those with a gitignore file. Right now, they're all going to be pushed up to GitHub. It's okay for today. Don't worry. GitHub is not going to get mad at us. Students do it all the time. All right, so how do we do this now? So here is my dependencies. Take a look at this. On my package.json, this is what your package.json should look like right now. You have a bunch of dependencies that are in your package.json. Yes? Guys, I'm gonna go a little bit further. I may be 5 minutes late. If you have to go, I totally understand. If you have to leave, I'm gonna keep going as long as no one kicks me out of this class. I'm gonna keep going for like 5 more minutes, as an example, okay? I want to install Font Awesome and Bootstrap now in my project. And this is the next step. So in my index.html, where I have my CSS section, here's when I'm going to add in my CSS. The first thing is I'm going to add in Bootstrap. It's going to look like this. I'm going to type in link, and I'm going to put in link CSS like this. That's the Emmet abbreviation for it, link:CSS. It's going to ask me, where do I want to get this installation? I know that it's inside of my node modules folder for my Bootstrap, right? So here's the link. It's going to go like this, right? So /node modules /bootstrap /dist for distribution /CSS, and it's bootstrap.min.css. That is the link. And I'll just close this off so you can see it like this. This is the Bootstrap style sheet. This makes sure that Bootstrap is installed in your site. And we're going to be using Bootstrap for the remainder of semester. So please install this. So you're good? How do I get the link? You just type in link like this. Here, I'll do the next one. For the next one, you type in link:CSS and then press tab. And it gives you this, right? And now we're going to do the next one, which is Fort Awesome. So we're going to say /node modules /Fort Awesome free CSS, and then we want all that .min.css. That's what we want. So node modules, yes. Minified, yes. Yeah, minified, which means compressed, right, for you. We're getting the compressed version of the CSS files because it's more efficient from a loading perspective, right? That's what it is. Okay, last one for links. Link, CSS, and we're going to load in our own link, which is our link that comes from the content folder. So content, app.css, which is what we should have. And we want to do it in that order because remember, it's a cascade. Our app.css should be at the bottom, so we can modify for Awesome or Bootstrap if we want, right? That's how it works. Now, at the bottom of the JavaScript section, let's do the next part. I want to do script source. And script source is going to have my, a couple of them. I want to have in jQuery first, right? So I'm going to say, hey, jQuery. So I'm going to go node modules, jQuery, and it's going to be dist, and it's going to be jQuery.min.js. So there's jQuery. Okay. I'll do the same thing for the next one. So script source, and I'm going to say /node modules, and we'll put in the Bootstrap scripts now. So Bootstrap, dist, JS, bootstrap.min.js. So now we got both the Bootstrap JavaScript and the Bootstrap CSS. You need both. Bootstrap CSS creates a layout. Bootstrap JavaScript enables the layout with behavior. It gives you things like pop-ups and a bunch of other stuff. All right. And finally, the last script we want is our own script. Okay, our own script. And we're going to put in script source, and then we're going to say scripts app.js. Those are the thing that you want to do. And we just want to do a hello. So we're going to say, let's check out if we can get this. I'm going to use an H1 tag, H1. I'm going to press tab. And inside there, I'm going to say something like, hello world. Okay. I want to wrap this tag inside of a div element. So here's my div element. Let's wrap it inside of a div element. You guys should know how to do this. Right? And in my div element, I want to give a class of, what's the Bootstrap class for thing? Container, right? You guys should know that. And now I want to test it. And this is a beautiful thing. We can test this whole thing by using light server. light server. Remember we downloaded and installed light server? We can do that by doing this. We can say light dash server. And if I did this properly, then we should just get a hello world that looks like this. And notice that it came up automatically. How I like to work is I want to put my browser on the left, or on the right, I mean, and I also want to put my Visual Studio Code on the left and my browser on the right, so I can see it like this. And what this beautiful thing does, this light server, it uses something called browser sync technology. So if I change my hello world to hello COMP2112, and I've just pressed save, it automatically updates it. I don't have to refresh. Okay. Notice how I did that. I just changed it on the left and it updated on the right. Guys, this is a way more efficient way of doing things than refresh, 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 keep refreshing. I have a local web server running for me right now, and it can do everything I need to do. Sorry? Why did that happen? Because I ran light server, light dash server, right? That's what I ran. So if you missed that step, it's here. I ran light server. Here's a light server up here. Light server will bring up your default browser. It'll bring it up at another window. And all I did was I just moved my window to the right, moved my Visual Studio Code to the left, and I see both side by side. That's what I did. Okay. Let's put this up on GitHub and we're done for the day. We have no chance to do more because unfortunately, well, unless you want to stick around for 5 more minutes and then I'll show you the iffy. I'll do 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I know you guys got something else to do. I'm sure you, do you have another class after this? No? Wonderful. So let's do one more thing and then we'll be done. We're done. All right. So let's go to this. So here's the last thing we're going to do. In my app.js folder, app.js file, right? We talked about this iffy. This is what the iffy looks like. Please don't be mad at me, okay? Here's what it looks like. Okay? And when you look at this, you're like, wait, Tom, what? What the heck is this? This is an iffy, which stands for those people who need to know, which is all of you, an immediately invoked function expression. And what an immediately invoked function expression does is, as soon as this goes there, it launches, right? And the one piece that's missing is this piece right here. Oops. Like this. That's your full iffy right here. Guys, remember, we're recording this, so you can always review this later on, right? Inside the iffy, I want to put in a little function called start. This is a JavaScript function, right? And I can use an event handler, right? Here's my add event listener. I can use an event handler for the load event. And when the load event, I want it to call start. In the start method, I can put in console log that says something like app started. 2 seconds of explanation for this, so you understand the project that I've made so far. Save. Make sure you save everything. The first part is this wrapper. It's called a closure from here to here. All right, that's what this is. And this closure is the iffy. This is the immediately invoked function expression. I want you to think about this. It's also known as a self-executing function. That's what it is. So basically what happens is that function calls itself. Okay, that's what it is. So when you go to this file, and because, you know, sorry, what was your name? The person who said that JavaScript at the bottom of the name? Sorry? Belinda? Belinda said we can put JavaScript at the top or at the bottom of our HTML. Because it's the bottom of the HTML, this is going to run as soon as all the content has loaded, right? But I'm going to further wait until the content is loaded. I'm using this event listener for the window to finish loading, right? I'm ensuring that the content is finished loading. And then what it's going to do is it's going to call the named function called start. That's what this is doing, right? So the function is a wrapper and the function keeps in all variable names. So if I make a variable in this function, it cannot escape to the general buffer of the browser. If these are all new terms for you, at the end of the semester, they will not be. You will have way more detailed knowledge than you have today, okay? So the buffer of the browser keeps hold of all of, as a global namespace, all variables that I declare, right? These are all variables that are declared. If I declare them outside of the IFE down here, right? Then it's part of the global namespace, but I put it inside the IFE. Anything that's inside here is only available inside that IFE. It's a closure or a namespace for myself. That's what I'm doing. And it's a safe way of keeping track of variables so that your users can't mess you up, which is, let's face it, all would be grand if we didn't have those pesky users, right? They mess us up all the time, except we need the users to live, right? So that is your function. To test this function now, let's go back to the website, which is this. And we're going to press Control-Shift-J, and Control-Shift-J is going to take us to our terminal. I'm just going to pull this terminal aside here and make it big. And you can see that I have my app started. Do you have this? If you bring up the terminal, yes, good. So what this is saying is this test that we just did is this. We made hello COMP2112, and at the bottom, after all the content loaded, I went to my script file and executed my IFE, which did a console log and printed it out here in the console in that particular order. Okay. Your in-class exercise is now complete. That's all I wanted to do. And I'm going to put this up on GitHub. And this is the last piece. Again, if you're going to watch this later, it's okay. I know I go a little fast and there's a lot of content today. I apologize, but this is how it's going to go. I'm going to put this up on GitHub. I can launch a second terminal if I want, right? Here in Visual Studio Code, right? So I can have multiple terminals happening at the same time. I'm going to put this up on GitHub and I'm going to issue the same 3 commands. What are the 3 commands I need? Actually, there's really 2, but there's 3 commands I need for GitHub to push it up to GitHub. The first one is, Tyler, git add dot, right? That adds all of it, including all of my third-party libraries like jQuery and Bootstrap and Font Awesome. Okay, we've added that in. Okay, you can see it takes a while. And the next one after my add is, what's the next one? Git commit. I like it. So let's clear the screen. I was like, yes, she's right. Git commit -m. And what did we do? We added third-party libraries. Let's put that in here. We'll say added, third-party libraries. It's what you did you want to put in there, right? Hey, look at that. We added our third-party libraries and it's going to go crazy, right? And the last command is, how do we push it to GitHub? Git push. We're done. Git push. And everything's up on GitHub. My friends, this is your in-class exercise 1. It's due Sunday at midnight. It's been recorded for you if you have any issues. I'm going to stop recording now because we're at 10:56 and I'm going to take any questions we have here locally.